So today we have a juicy one. Can having sex with men over 40 early in the dating process be a good thing? Now, I know this title and conversation will be a little bit controversial, but I believe talking about something as important as sex is a good thing. Let's face it, since the advent, oops, I didn't turn off my phone. Since the advent of birth control, sex hasn't had the same consequences 9 months later. But certainly, sexually transmitted diseases can drastically affect a person's life, and more importantly, bonding with someone can equally have dramatic effects on a person's life. So, when it comes to sex, I have an acronym I'd like to share with everyone. And if you have a pen and paper, I'd pull it out right now and write this down. If someone is watching the live stream, if you can put this in the chat box, I'd be really grateful. But the acronym is called CARES, CARES, CARES. Now, the C stands for, and this is related to when to have sex, the C stands for comfortable. You should have sex when you feel comfortable. By the way, some people feel comfortable on the first date. So you can have sex whenever you want, whenever it feels comfortable. Now, the A stands for be aware of the consequences. As we talked about earlier, certainly making a baby is a gigantic consequence that we typically don't have to worry about. And certainly for those of us in midlife, it's not as prevalent because most people are past the baby making years, but be aware of the consequences, not just the consequences for diseases, but also the emotional consequences if you bond with someone too quickly. And we're going to talk about bonding in a moment. Now, the R stands for learn their real intentions or his real intentions. And by the way, this acronym can be applied for men with women and women for men. But I always say learn their real intentions. What do they really want? What's their motive in this process of getting to know you? And we'll talk about that a little bit more detail as well. The E stands for exclusive. I believe if two people are having regular sex together, it should be exclusive. Now, I know, or monogamous, we should say, but that's my belief system, mainly because I don't like spreading cooties with another person. Not to suggest that I'm spreading cooties with a person, but certainly I don't want to take the risk. And certainly I believe in exclusivity, and hopefully you feel the same way. And the S stands for safety. Whether it is from a disease perspective, certainly from a physical presence perspective, I think we should have sex when we feel safe. So CARES, comfortable, aware of the consequences, real intentions, exclusivity, and certainly safety. So we talked about disease for a moment. You know, it's interesting. I would say roughly 1/3 of people out in the dating marketplace over 40 years old have herpes. And herpes now is not as big a deal. Certainly, we barely hear about AIDS. With respects to gonorrhea and syphilis, believe it or not, you can take a pill and that can be gone right away. So we certainly don't have to worry about diseases as much to the extent that we maybe did worry about it more before. But then again, each person has to look at this from their own viewpoint, their own lens. But I want to talk about something even more emotionally challenging, and that is when we bond with another person. And again, this conversation, you're going to find it, I'll get into it in a few minutes, but you're going to find this to be fascinating, my point of view. But when it comes to bonding, there's something known as oxytocin. Now, once a baby is born, oxytocin helps move milk, I'm going to read here, from the ducts into the breast to the nipple and fosters a bond between mother and baby. Our bodies also produce oxytocin when we're excited by our sexual partners and when we feel love. That's why it's earned the nickname the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. So many of you have heard about oxytocin, how this can oftentimes bond. Typically, it's associated with women bonding with men, but I have some perspective about this. So can sex early with a man, we're talking about men over 40, be a good thing? Now, On some level, it's easier for me to have this conversation as a man because I believe testosterone overrides the bonding chemical of oxytocin, whereas estrogen might amplify it. Now, again, I have no scientific studies to validate what I'm saying. I certainly, maybe the Kensington Institute or Masters and Johnson's might have some research on this. But the one challenge with those research studies, it's mostly been prepared or executed with a much younger demographic. If memory serves me correctly, both the Kensington Institute and also Masters and Johnson mostly studied men and women in their 20s. And so I don't believe it actually accurately reflects the biological changes that happen for those in our 40s, 50s, and even 60s. Now, mind you, this is a supposition on my part, but let's examine this further. Now, there is a saying that men seek sex to experience love, and women give sex seeking love. But here's the thing. I believe as men age, their testosterone levels drop and their estrogen levels increase. And from what I understand, it's kind of the same thing happens with women to some degree, that their hormones begin to change. So when we're talking about 20 and 30-year-olds versus the over 40 population, I think it's really important to recognize that this chemical reaction of bonding with respects to hormones and such might not be an accurate representation for those of us 40s, 50s, and even 60s, and certainly 70s. So now you might be wondering, Jonathan, why is having sex early a good thing? Well, I want to add another adage that men fall in love with their eyes, meaning we are physical creatures, and women fall in love between the ears. So from where I sit, women over 40 bond more with the man as they've gotten to know him, over a period of time. Actually, I believe there's more bonding when there's an emotional connection versus that physical connection that happens. Because maybe all the studies about oxytocin that's done with a younger demographic really doesn't apply to the 40, 50, and 60-year-old demographic in the same way. Again, this is merely a supposition on my part, okay? So isn't it interesting that if a woman waits longer to have sex with a man, she might be bonding with him emotionally, and then that physical intimacy triggers a real strong bond. So, whereas men, and as men age, I said their testosterone levels drop, their estrogen levels increase. What if it's possible that a man bonds with a woman as he ages through physical intimacy, if it's done, if the physical intimacy is early in the dating process? Now, ladies, I recognize that I have habitually said, before the penis goes inside the vagina, learn his real intentions, okay? And I oftentimes recommend reading the book, the first chapter of the book, 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman. I always recommend this, mainly so you can get a taste of the first chapter is trust and commitment. Well, we talked about one of the elements of CARES, C-A-R-E-S. The S stands for safety, which is really about trust. And trust isn't just about fidelity. Trust is, does this person have my best interest at heart? So certainly you'd want to have some reflection of that. Now, could you establish this on a first date? Probably not. But it's interesting to me that I know many people that had sex on the first date and they're still together. So this begs my question, which is better, to have sex early or waiting? Well, here's the thing about waiting. Oh, no, I want to go back to something. I missed a step in this conversation. I'll come back to this in a second. See, ladies, I recognize that there's a significant percentage of men that are triggered by lust or limerence. Now, lust is that physical desire to be intimate with a woman. Okay. And limerence is extreme infatuation. But let's go back to lust for a moment. You know, ladies, you've heard this from all the other dating coaches out there. Men love the hunt and men love the chase, and you should just let a man pursue you. Just remember, most men are just hunting sex. They're not walking around going, I'm hunting a relationship. I'm hunting a relationship. I just want a relationship. And I'm going to go out on the hunt. I'm going to pull out my bow and arrow and I'm going to find that relationship because I've been told I love the hunt and men are supposed to chase. You know, I'm sorry, but there's just so much bullshit advice out there. You know, I've got to stop for a moment and say, I listen to the rhetoric out there from so many people that are the younger demographic or that group of men and women coaches who got married at a young age and they're trying to give advice to our demographic. I mean, it's just bullshit. You can't, by the way, if someone's been married for a decade and a half, for 20 or 30 years, they learned something well before. Listen, none of them know about swipe dating. None of them know the emotional effects that have occurred since social media has blasted into our environment. They learned something a long time ago and they're teaching one way. I'm like it's like, it amazes me to listen to all the bullshit rhetoric out there because you can't apply something that happened a decade or two ago to today's environment. And let's add this one other factor in it. So for those of us in midlife, we've had a significant marriage that didn't work out. Maybe you had 2 marriages that didn't work out. Maybe you had a significant relationship that didn't work out. Do you guys realize the emotional effects of when I say, do you realize? Of course you realize. Of course you know. Because listen, I'm in the boat as you're in the same boat as you. I know what extreme heartbreak feels like in the grieving process of going through a treasured relationship that didn't work out and it wasn't your choice. And the deep emotional effects of either being a people pleaser in a relationship or fighting or flighting from a relationship, or worse, getting bitter and jaded. It so saddens me to witness so many women in particular that have become bitter or jaded in this process. And it's no wonder so many of you are floundering. Not to mention how fucked up online dating is. Online dating is the #1 place people are meeting today. But the effort that's put into this, the apathy is so fucking pathetic. And I'm speaking to you. I'm sorry if this irritates you to hear this, what I believe is truth. It's my belief system. But so many human beings are so ridiculously apathetic. And they keep wondering, what's the definition of insanity? Well, if I keep doing the same thing over and 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 over again, I might get a different result. Like that's how, I'm sorry. I laugh sometimes at the apathy and the naivety and the ignorance. And at the same time, I'm ridiculously sad. Anyway, I got off on a tangent. So having sex early or waiting. See, here's the thing about waiting for sex, ladies. And again, this is a tricky subject. I'm just putting this out there as a perspective. You've dated a man, you decide you're going to wait a couple months. You've built this emotional bond, and then you're physically intimate with this person, thinking they're more legit. And then they decide this relationship doesn't work for them. Would it be better to have sex this is just a proposition, have sex on the first date to have him bail because you haven't gotten too attached to him, or wait and then have sex and get attached? Now, here's the thing. Folks, you all know, or maybe you don't know, I do believe sex is very sacred, okay? I'm going to own it. I think sex is a sacred act, okay? So I know what I just said a moment ago might be controversial, but here's where it gets tricky. If you're familiar with my 3 types of men who are actively coaching, this is not a fact, it's merely an opinion. There are users, which represent about 20% of the population. There are spenders that represent 60% of the population, and then there are the grower builders. They represent about 20% of the population. Now, the users, they seek short-term game, love bombers, players, gold diggers, entitled, selfish people, only care about themselves. See, these guys will push for sex so early on, you will feel so overwhelmed, and then your head will be spinning that you just had sex with them and they literally disappear. But listen, if you bought into their rhetoric, you know, shame on you. I'm sorry. I'm going to call that for what it is. You can't believe the bullshit that comes out of a man's mouth if he's pushing for sex early on. Next are those spenders. They seek companionship, connection, sex. They have no direction, uncertainty, fearful. They usually have a dysfunctional life. They just want to spend time with you, that you are a placeholder relationship. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. And then there's the grower builder seeking long-term commitment, emotional grown-up, good relationship skills, have their act together. Now, here's the tricky part about having sex early with the user. He's gone right away. You fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I'm sorry. The spender is a little bit tricky. This is usually an emotionally broken guy. He can have sex with you and bond with you, okay? But his life is such a mess that he'll end it with you rather quickly. Now, how do you avoid this? Or how do you know someone's a grower builder? You see, a grower builder can have sex with you on a first date. And he's, you know, if he values what the two of you have. Now, I'm just saying this is a supposition on my part. I'm not saying this is a fact. Okay, but a grower builder, he's probably going to build a life with you because he's already innately a grower builder. That spender, here's the tricky part. So what I teach in my private coaching, by the way, is there's a link right here to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach right for you. There's links below to schedule a discovery call with me. See, ladies, what most of you lack is real discernment, real vetting skills. Many of you have a broken picker. Believe it or not, before you ever have a first date with a guy, you can learn so much on the telephone if you practice what I teach, which is vulnerability, authenticity, transparency, radical honesty, laying your cards on the table well before you have sex, and what's known as the rules of engagement. Again, I teach this in my private coaching, okay? And if you want to connect with me, then schedule a call with me, okay? Many of you, believe it or not, you can have several telephone calls. You can have 1 or 2 dates. You can learn more. Okay, let me rewind for a second. Do you know how many women I've spoken to have just ended, a relationship has just ended with them? And I always ask this question. Did you know on the first, second, or third date something was off, but you went against your intuition or better judgment? And they all say the same thing. I knew something was off, but I went against my better judgment. Your intuition is screaming. The problem is you don't know how to listen to your intuition. This is where learning effective vetting skills and discernment helps actually amplify your intuition. So you can pick up on those users and spenders and even those grower builders so much faster than ever before because you are attuned to your sovereignty. You are so attuned to who you are and what you want. This is one of the reasons why I get calls each week from clients. Jonathan, I met a great guy. Jonathan, I met a great guy. Jonathan, I met a great guy. And they know the difference because they're attuned to their intuition. So it doesn't matter if they had sex on the 3rd date or the 10th date because they have attuned themselves to such trust that they know the actual grower builders versus those users and spenders very early on. So coming back to my original point, if you end up having sex very early on and it doesn't work out, chances are you really haven't bonded with them. When you bond, remember I said men fall in love through their eyes and women fall in love between their ears? That's because women oftentimes create an emotional connection and bond with someone through a lot of conversation. So just remember, maybe, and I'm just saying maybe, having sex early might not be such a bad thing and have it end. Again, I'm speaking as a man. It's easier for me to say this. Many of you can say, Jonathan, this is different for women. But you know what? I certainly can understand those 20 and 30-year-old women. But for those of us who've been around the block for a while, 40s, 50s, and even 60s, maybe it's a different experience for us. There aren't enough studies to really know how physical intimacy affects those of us in midlife, those baby boomers and Gen Xers, the way those studies were done in the 30s, 40s, and even 50s for a much younger demographic. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if this conversation is. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. As always, if you value what I say, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos as well. As always, if you want to connect with me, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. There's a link to follow me on Instagram to get my dating vows, to get all the books I recommend. And don't forget to get my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work. Links below as well. All right, those who know my live format, it's time for Q&A. If you have a question, there's a little chat box in the bottom here. Write the word question, then post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $ in the chat box. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Aslay. That's a picture of him right there. It's one of my favorite pictures. He created his own little climbing thing at the wall at our home. He's my son who passed away over 6 years ago. In his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and also scholarships to coaching as well. Our goal tonight is $50, so I'd appreciate some love for Connor Aslay. Thank you so much. Oh, also, if you want to join me live, I'll post a link. You can get on the hot seat and talk to me live. Oh my God, Debbie is such a wonderful human being. Love these charts. She just gave us a $20 super sticker. Thank you for the love. I really appreciate it. Debbie, if I could reach in the camera and give you a hug, I really would. All right. Let's see. What behavior, Renee says, what behaviors change in terms of estrogen levels rise? Well, again, I haven't read enough studies about this. I don't think enough studies have been done to with respects to men, because from what I understand, as our testosterone levels drop, our estrogen levels rise, and men start to become a bit more emotional. And I don't think enough conversation has been discussed around this. But I believe that, one of the things, midlife crisis is a reflection of a change of hormones for both men and women alike. So I guess the question, well, be more specific with your question. I'll answer that. Okay. Hey, I want to thank Roller Goer for the $2 super sticker. That means our goal for the rest of the evening is $28. Thank you so much. Laura's in the house. Question. I've been talking to a man who's working on an oil rig in New Mexico and wants me to get access to his account to buy some equipment and internet connection. Is he a scammer? Yeah, that's most likely a scammer. I mean, first off, ladies, never, ever, 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 ever do anything financial other than maybe taking a man out to dinner. It's about the most I want to, or buy him a birthday present or a Christmas present, unless you two are moving in together. Don't do anything financial with a person you've never met. And until you've actually been dating a while, never, ever, ever do any financial transactions with a man. Yes, he's most likely a scammer. Annika's in the house. We haven't seen you in a while. Thank you. Well, actually, I saw you last week. How do we address loss of physical attraction in relationships? Your opinion. That's a tough one. I think let me just play with this one for a second. I'm thinking my mother and father. My mother was a debutante. My father was the commander of a destroyer in the Turkish Navy. My mother was this petite woman, 5'5". My father, very George Clooney, handsome. And by the time I was born, my mother was 5'5" and 300 pounds. And years ago, when my dad was in his 80s, I asked him, have you ever cheated on mom? Thinking he might give me a legit answer. And he said, no. And I said, why? And he goes, I've always seen your mom the way I first met her. So he goes, I see her with the eyes of when she was in her mid-20s. That's a very rare experience, Annika. But certainly people that have grown together over a period of time and their physical appearances change while men get beer bellies and lose their hair, women certainly put on weight. I think for those of us in midlife, this is a kind of a different thing because we have to differentiate between attraction that is love attachment style versus actual physical attraction. I think the reality is for those of us in midlife, you know, people don't look as good as they did in their 20s and 30s. Some people do, but not most. I mean, I would say most men and women in their 50s and 60s just don't look as good as they did in their 20s. I just think that's a fact. Okay. Certainly there's exceptions to the rule. Now, with that said, and some people actually get better looking with age, but that's another conversation. I think you might sometimes be experiencing what we believe is attraction, which is actually love attachment style. If you're not familiar with the book Wired for Love by Dr. Stan Tatkin, How to Understand Your Partner's Brain, attachment style can help you diffuse, deflect, and build a secure relationship. I think oftentimes we confuse our attraction for attachment. So the question is so what happens is when we start to become a secure person, we don't see the person in the same way. This is, again, my supposition, my perspective on this. So how do we address physical attraction? You know what? I'm a believer fucking on a regular basis solves that. Maybe, okay, forgive me, but I think regular great sex solves the attraction piece. Now that's coming from a horny guy, so maybe I'm not accurate in this assessment. But I believe having regular great sex with a partner can overcome maybe person not being as attractive as you would like them to be. Just a perspective there. Hope that helps. Debbie wants to remind everyone that, yes, it's a scammer, Laura. All right. RM Bell says Jonathan has enough subscribers yet, so he's so cool he doesn't keep the YouTube subscribers plaque visible. It's right over there on my office desk. I can visibly see it, so thank you. Matters more to me. Natty says, date with the eyes of your age, right, Jonathan, not as a 20. Yeah, you know what's so funny? I'm sorry. This is a judgment for a lot of you women. And I know, listen, we know men habitually want to date younger. But I got to tell you something. I hear complaint after complaint after complaint from women who aren't happy with the men their age. I think we all date with younger eyes. It's just a fact of the way I perceive things. Let's keep going. Oh, Annika just gave us a $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. So that means our goal for the rest of the evening is $23. $23 for the rest of the evening. I'd appreciate that for the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. Anyone wants to join me on the hot seat live, you can do that. I just posted a link. Renee just wants to remind Lori, I wouldn't go into accounts even with permission unless it's my husband. Yeah, I never give your password. Listen, that's just a setup for failure. So as we're waiting for more questions, I want to share something. I had an interesting conversation with a person today that said they probably wouldn't hire a dating coach if they weren't in a relationship. And I thought about that and I said, well, I can appreciate that. Kind of like what I was saying earlier in this video. See, certainly if you met a dating coach who's been married for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or even someone as wonderful as Matthew Hussey, who's younger, how many of them really know what I've experienced? And listen, I'm touting my own horn. This might seem a little arrogant, but I've been through alimony, child support, visitation rights, family court. I go through erectile dysfunction. I have to take a blue pill. I've dated women who are on estrogen and going through hormonal changes. I've dated women who have had breast reconstruction surgery because they had breast cancer and had to remove their breasts. I've dated women who have had hysterectomies. I've dated women who have ghosted. I've dated women who are gold diggers. When I say dated, I've gone out with, I should say. I've gone through the emotional effects of a treasured relationship that ending at midlife, meaning after 50 years old. I had two relationships that ended. One didn't break my heart, but the last one ripped me to shreds, broke my heart into a million pieces, folks. And so what makes me uniquely qualified is I'm experiencing what many of my clients experience. I'm not here to teach you how to get a guy. I'm here to encourage everyone empowerment. That's what I teach. I teach individual empowerment because it's impossible to guarantee getting the guy. In fact, the fact of the matter is, folks, and I think you appreciate me because I don't blow smoke up your ass. The odds are against you. I'm sorry to say, the odds are against you. You know, whenever you see a happy couple, that's the broken clock syndrome. You know, the broken clock is right twice a day. Given how many first marriages end in divorce, how many second marriages end in divorce, how many third marriages end in divorce, how many people have had multiple relationships, the reality is the happily ever after narrative is a fucking crock of shit. Okay? My job is to simply put the odds in your favor by teaching empowerment skills. So when someone says you're not qualified to be a coach, I am the most no, that's too much. Okay. I'm incredibly qualified to know what most of my clients go through from an empathetic perspective. Certainly that person's been married for 10 or 20 years who hasn't had to deal with the bullshits of swipe dating. They can be sympathetic, but can they know the emotional challenges we all face? So I call bullshit where I see it. I think a lot of advice out there, the rhetoric out there is so full of crap. It's no wonder many of you are so damn frustrated because it's so confusing. All of the books out there on relationships are so fucking confusing. This is why I listen, I'm not here to suggest that the books I recommend, by the way, there's a link below to get a copy of all the books I recommend are the best books. It just happen to be books that I resonate with. And if my conversation resonates with you, then maybe those same books, those same teachings will resonate with you as well. Bower of G says, toot your horn. Thank you so much. Roller Girl says, yes, you are qualified. Thank you so much. You know, RM Bell says, you have experience, plus you have a gift. You know, I do recognize that. Folks, I got to tell you something. I'm fascinated with human behavior. I am fascinated with human pair bonding. I spend a ridiculous amount of time, both introspective in my own world, trying to figure out this thing called life for myself. And then I superimpose my perceptions on what I've observed out in the dating marketplace, having over 20,000 hours of coaching in the last 15, 16 years, give or take. I have over 3,000 hours of personal development workshops, and I don't share that to impress you. I just want to impress upon you, stealing a little quote from Tony Robbins, that I'm a junkie for this stuff, and I'm grateful for those that follow me because I hope you appreciate that I bring to your world a contrarian point of view, because I'm here to say the bullshit narratives we all grew up with, homie ain't playing that game because it don't work. It just don't work. All right. Debbie says, truth, Jonathan. Thank you so much. All right. I saw a question from Wanda. Why would men over 6 states away like me on a dating site? To me, that just gives them away as a phony or scammer. I keep waiting for a nice guy just to talk to for a while before I give my number. Well, you already answered your question. If it reeks of being a phony, then it's a phony. I guess the real question is, why do you care? Why do you care what a man does? Ladies, what matters most, this is where, I'm sorry, I've got to say this. Stop giving a shit what men think, okay? I know my channel is all designed to get you to click based on men because you ladies are ridiculous. You guys want to, why do men do this? And why do men do that? And why do men do this? And why do men do that? So you'll click. But none of my rhetoric is designed to really answer those questions. My rhetoric is designed for you to be an empowerment for yourself. So I invite you, Wanda, why do you fucking give a shit? Now you say, I keep waiting for a nice guy just to talk to for a while. Well, then there's a good chance your dating profile is probably shitty. Because if you have a fantastically curated profile, you get plenty of men in your own geography. Excuse me. So maybe it's just you have a shitty profile. Sorry. Listen, I could be all empathetic and kind and be all loving and be warm and all that kind of stuff and just say all the nice things to make you feel good. Or sometimes you just listen, I know it sucks. You're in the workforce. You're getting smacked around all the time and you don't want to be on my channel. You want to be loved. Okay. Tough love is just wake up call. You know, I read a quote that once said, fall down 7 times, get up 8. If that's the way the quote goes. We human beings don't learn until we fall down. Hence why I smack people upside the head. Sometimes a wake-up call is the only way to shake us up. Anyways, thanks for your question. I appreciate that. Oh, Crystal says a midlife relationship will only work with self-awareness and the capacity to work through the shit folks bring to the relationship. Amen, 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 amen. That is exactly right. Debbie says, I think we are fascinated with your perception, Jonathan, or we wouldn't be here. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Many of you are junkies for it too. I appreciate that. Bum, bum, bum. Debbie wants to let Wanda know, don't give a darn. Exactly, exactly. Joe Daisy's in the house and she says, perhaps both are broken when she knows he's broken, yet they are attached to the natural chemistry and adore each other as best friends talking for hours. It's difficult to fathom letting go. You know, I didn't share this with you guys. I think it was back in April. I connected with a woman on Instagram who'd been following me for a while, and she sent me an article to read. I don't even remember what it was about now. And I really liked it. So I messaged her and we went back and forth for a little bit and we talked on the telephone. And it turns out she lives in Massachusetts and I live here. And we just started to hit it off. We were talking every day. And I was going through one of my pity parties during that period of time in my life, of which I will have an occasional pity party of how I was really still hurting over the ending of my relationship. Not that I was pity partying with her. And we developed a friendship. And then we were kind of like exploring the idea of even a relationship kind of thing. But she lives in Massachusetts. I live here. And I'm like, truthfully, I mean, I like this person, but I'm fucking lazy. I don't want to get on an airplane and fly somewhere to meet someone. That's just how I feel. And she kept saying, oh, I'm up for a vacation. I'm up for a vacation. But I'm like, look, you have a fully curated life there. And I recognized after about a month and a half of talking, and I really enjoyed the conversation, it wasn't healthy for me. Not that, because it became kind of an addiction to talk to this person. And I came to the conclusion that it really wasn't going to serve me, because if I met the love of my life the next day, I probably wouldn't be talking to this person. So I suggested that we discontinue the regular communication. And then I felt the absence of that. And then I felt the guilt around that. And I felt all the emotional components that go on with this. And it was very awkward to rip the Band-Aid off of this experience. And eventually we kind of went back to our routine of sending each other every once in a while a meme or a reel on Instagram. But my point in bringing up this story, we have to be very careful whom we give our energy to. On some level, it was a temporary fix, much like drugs. It was a temporary self-medication, but there's a consequence when we give our energy to someone that isn't a potential life partner, because this is the real challenge with, remember coming back to this conversation about sex, I don't think we bond through sex in the same way. Actually, I think men bond through sex as they age more so, but if they're emotionally healthy. If they're emotionally unhealthy, they're just so fucked up they ain't going to bond with anyone. But I think, ladies, the more time you spend with someone and it doesn't work out, that's the real challenge. It's not the sex. It's the bonding that comes through the emotional connection with another human being. That's just a perception I have. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Please post a comment. Power of Chi. Question. One of my guilty pleasures is couples watching their body language and energy. Sometimes I can tell they're about to break up or last. What's one of your guilty pleasures? Okay, folks. I remember I was once on a date. It was the night before my birthday. This was probably 7 years ago. And we were sitting at the bar on a Thursday night, and all these couples kept walking in and sitting down and all this stuff. And I said, let's play a fun game and make up stories about each couple. Are they on a first date? What are they talking about? Have they been married? And we would each create a little story about each person. And I loved it. First off, I love couples watching. I love projecting my shit onto couples. Excuse me. When I say my shit, my projections, my judgments, I keep them to myself, but that's certainly one of my guilty pleasures. One of my horrible guilty pleasures is sometimes I'll watch the same movie over and over and over again. I actually, my friend of mine Googled this. What is the psychological effects of repeating a movie over and over again? And why I do it is it allows me to kind of mindlessly watch a movie without having to be as present, but it's usually a numbing effect for me. So that's a guilty pleasure. I don't know if doing psychedelic therapy counts as a guilty pleasure, but that's one of my guilty pleasures. So those are a few. All right. Oh, Natty says giving your energy to the wrong people or person will have you completely miss the right person. That's quite possible. I do suppose that is quite possible. By the way, if anyone wants to join me live on the hot seat, I just post a link. By the way, I'd appreciate some love to the Connor Asley Scholarship Fund. Power Chi wants to thank me. Movies. One of the movies I love to watch over and over again is Shawshank Redemption. Actually, that's a movie I get into. You know, one movie I've probably seen 100 times, I think, is The Never Ending Story. I know it's a kid's movie, but that and Princess Bride, I've probably seen them. I'm exaggerating when I see it 100 times, but I just love those two movies. Wesley's care for Buttercup, that true love, and the heart of that little boy in Never Ending Story. I feel like I'm Sebastian sometimes, or Bastian, excuse me, in Never Ending Story, because I feel like I'm that little kid sometimes. And then I feel like Wesley sometimes in Princess Bride. So anyway, two movies that is my guilty pleasure. Debbie says, I love Something's Gotta Give. It's Complicated are two of my favorite movies. Great movies. God, I haven't seen them in a very, very long time. I was listening to interview with what's his name? Rob Reiner, talking about the scene in Harry Met Sally, where the orgasm scene where he gets his mother to make the comment, I'll have what she's having. That was a last minute decision. I think it was an interview with Nora Ephron. Anyway, another one of my favorite movies, When Harry Met Sally. Yes, Power Chi wants to remind everyone The Never Ending Story. Two of my favorites. So listen, if you've got a personal question for me, I will leave this balance of the space. You can ask me whatever you want. I will open myself up to you without crossing my own boundary of confidentiality. You can ask me any question you want. You ask me about my guilty pleasures, certainly. If you want to ask me about relationship questions, if you want to ask me anything, I'm opening up the balance of the space in the conversation for any questions you might have of me. And again, I'll post the link right here if you want to join me live on the hot seat. Notebook, people are talking about that. Again, if you have a personal question for me, write the word personal question and post the question thereafter, or you can just write question and post the question thereafter. Or we'll just do a movie binge right here as I look at the comments coming in. Folks, I recognize that I think, when I look back at the last 5 years of my dating experiences, so Tia wants to know, how did your recent date with Maria go? Okay, I don't know if I shared this with everyone. I do believe I did. So I had 2 dates with a woman named Maria. God, talk about a weird irony there. And after our second date, my intuition was saying something was off between us. I can't tell you specifically what it was, but I felt a misalignment between the two of us. And so 2 days after that date, I messaged her saying, and I energetically pulled back. Okay. I pulled back the day after the date. And while I messaged her on Sunday, we had a date on Saturday a couple of weeks ago. I messaged her she messaged me on Sunday, good morning. I messaged her back. I messaged her on Monday saying, you might have noticed I've pulled back. And I went on to say that my gut is telling me something's off between us. So we ended up having a telephone call, and I said, my gut is telling me we're off. And so we basically decided to part and go separate ways. Okay. And then 2 days later, she wrote me a very heartfelt message. Oh, let me just say this. We had very strong chemistry, very strong physical attraction for one another. Okay. But my gut was saying something's off, something's off, something's off. And so I effectively said, I'm not going to ask you out again. I mean, that's effectively what I said. And then 2 days later, she wrote me a very heartfelt message. And so we end up getting on the phone the following day, and we talked about something, and it's kind of personal, so I'm not going to share with it, or it's private for her, I should say, where I saw a misalignment between the two of us. Okay. And we kind of agreed that we're probably not a fit for one another. But what she said was, she said something, look, what if, would you be open to giving it a couple weeks or so to give it a chance, kind of thing? And, I thought to myself, she comes to the table with a lot. She's attractive. We have chemistry. She's owns her own home. She drives, like all these, she checks a lot of boxes, but I do believe that we're misaligned in one particular area in our life. And so, which is a really important thing. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker per se, but it's a real recognition of where we're different in a pretty radically different way, or radical way for me. But we ended up having a telephone call today, and we'd agreed that we'll probably see each other again this weekend and spend a little bit more time than just a traditional date together. Now, I'm very upfront what I feel is the misalignment between us, but at the same time, what I appreciate most is we're having radically honest conversations with one another. We are having real conversation. It's not, how's your day going? Did you have a good day? Wait a minute, let me do it this way. How's your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day. I can't wait to hear about your day. Tell me about your day. I hope your day is great. Most human beings have such fucking superficial conversations. I go for the meat. I dive in the deep end. She said to me, she goes, Jonathan, I've never met a man like you. I am so used to men. Like now comparing you to any other guy, every other man is going to seem boring because you actually think about this shit. Like, folks, I'm thinking about I look at dating like a chess game. I'm not thinking of the opening move. Anybody can move a pawn, okay? Anybody can move a pawn, which basically means any man can take you out on a date and pay for a date. Any idiot can do that, okay? But learning the strategy, learning moves, that's the way I think of it. It's knowing what's the next move. That's the real for lack of a better word, game in dating, mating, and relating. So I'm open to it. I said, look, I have my reservation, but you know what? I mean, we're having this great dialogue. I appreciate that you're willing to have a dialogue that's beyond the surface. And because of that, we're going to maybe see each other again. But I said, look, if it doesn't work out after that, we can go our separate ways. We can be friends to whatever extent that means. But I'm just letting you know where I think we're misaligned with one another. And I want to talk a little bit more. So when I felt my intuition say this isn't I'm saying my intuition says she's probably not the one, but you know what? I didn't say she's definitively not the one because there's no such thing as the one. This is where we get so fucking hung up. All my intuition said to me in the beginning was something is off. So talk about what's off. I didn't realize that that's what my intuition was saying is something is off. Talk about what's off. Folks, too many of you have this on over your mouth. Duct tape. You're not talking about what's off. When you want to know where this relationship is going is because something is off. When something is off, you have to listen to your intuition and recognize that it's really about digging deeper to go, what is the misalignment? Anyway, that's where we stand, her and I hope that gives you some context, okay? All right, I want to thank Sharon for the $10 super sticker. Thank you so much. That means we have $18 more to go for the rest of the evening. Bum, 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 bum. And you know what? Coming back to Renee, she was a good catch. You know, folks, here's the thing. Certainly when good people come in your life, they deserve a little bit more attention if you do perceive them to be a good person. There's no doubt about it. But every human being, I believe, let me reframe that. If we operate from our authentic self, this comes from a place of knowing thyself and operating from our authentic, empowered self, we can have these radically honest conversations. And guess what? If it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And this person, I've shared my truth. And you know what? She's opening the door. And what I'm saying is, ladies, you've been told, don't chase men, don't chase men, don't chase men. I'm here to say, sometimes you need to open the door to get the guy to walk through. That's not chasing. All she did was open the door. And I even said, thank you for sending this message, for opening the door, because it got me to think beyond the surface, because she gave me new intel. She gave me new information. Okay. All right. Oh, I want to thank RN for the $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. Rachel, I've been dating for a month now, and my partner told me he's not good at planning dates. Is it okay if I'm only one plan? Oh my God. So Rachel or Rachel, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible social director. I am a terrible social director. I'm very upfront with anyone I date. I'm not the best social director. But listen, I'm a good follower. If you've got a plan, I'm a good follower. But Jonathan, that makes you in your feminine energy. And we women want masculine men that take the lead because we are attracted to that masculine man. Do you know what's more fucking attractive? A man that can talk about his feelings, a man who has emotional IQ, a man who has a connection with the divine. That's a whole lot more fucking attractive than a guy who can plan dates, in my opinion. Okay? That's just my opinion. Crystal's in the house. Question, assuming you entered your last relationship with a heart towards your partner, what have you discussed about your relationship morphed into heartbreak when misaligned in life stages? Okay. One thing I recognized in my relationship with my last relationship is I didn't understand the significance of our individual passions. Okay. She had her passion in life and I had a different passion in life. But the thing is, there was a slight crossover in desire for each one of us. But what happened was she was coming closer to mine and I was coming closer to hers. But what ended up happening was she wanted to hyper focus on her passion and I wanted to hyper focus on my passion. We briefly had crossover. I will tell you what the passion is. She has a gigantic passion for travel. If she had her druthers, she'd travel every day of the week. Every day of the week, that would be her passion. My passion is personal development, self-help, spiritual work. My passion is to be of service. I need someone who probably buys into my passion, because that's just so radically important. And Marie temporarily got into the videos with me, but it wasn't her passion, and her passion was something different than mine. So the fact is we crossed over thinking we would embrace each other's passion, but what ended up happening was I realized that we were misaligned in our life vision. She had a different life vision than my life vision. And while it temporarily crossed over, hence why we got in a relationship together, her vision was different than mine. And that's why she felt the need to end the relationship. And you know what? That's okay. No harm, no foul. Why did it break my heart? Because, folks, I was incredibly attached to this person. I don't know if it was healthy attachment or unhealthy attachment, but I was very much attached. It took me a year to heal from that. Anyway, so misalignment, folks. You know why it's called dating? Because holy fucking shit, trying to figure out another human being was taken. So they go, well, let's make it easy. We'll call it dating. Holy fucking shit, trying to figure out another human being is insane. Anyway, let's keep going. Sherry wants to say those superficial conversations are so boring. I agree. Roller Girl says we need men of Jonathan's caliber. You know what? Us men need women of my caliber too. Ladies, I'm going to tell you something. You women are just as fucking delusional as men. You guys are just as fucking clueless. You know what? Self-awareness is not for the faint of heart. Personal development, self-help and spiritual work is not for the faint of heart. And just because women can be more tapped into their emotions doesn't mean you're any better at relationship. Just a perspective. Oh, Sharon says, in honor of your son, Connor. That's crazy sticker. By the way, Sharon, my license plate says Salty 99 because Connor's nickname was Salty. And it says in honor of Connor. So the fact that you just said that touched my heart. All right. Diane has a personal question. You can't know it's misalignment this fast. Your acquaintances, good heavens. I would say the average person doesn't even have a clue what alignment is. I'm hyper aware of who I am. And by the way, you can have misalignment. You can find a misalignment on the first telephone call. Folks, when you are tapped into your divine self, your spiritual self, your higher self, when you know yourself, you are so attuned to, because alignment is like a tuning fork. You can hear misalignment. The reason why you think it's not true is because most people are asleep. You know why it's called awakening? Because we wake up from this dream of the delusion or illusion that we've been fed through social media and through all of our narratives and stories growing up. You can absolutely recognize misalignment. Like, by the way, let me give you an example of two people who are misaligned. Someone who would die on the sword for Donald Trump and someone who would die on the sword for Kamala Harris. I guarantee you those two people are misaligned, and you could figure that out on it. You don't need 8 dates to figure that out. Anyways, that's my perception anyway. Power Cheese says, where were you being like Jerry Seinfeld? Are you purposely looking for the other shoe to drop? No. I clearly discussed with this person where I think we were misaligned. And she agreed that there probably is a misalignment. Is that enough to work with? And so that's the big difference. I didn't say, first, my intuition said something is off. So I pulled back and I expressed why I pulled back. Okay. But the fact that we had a conversation. Like Jerry Seinfeld, she ate her peas with a fork. He didn't call her back. She had man hands. He didn't call her back. She was a close talker. He didn't call her back. She was a soft talker. He didn't call her back. That's being picky. I had a very in-depth conversation to determine if we're on the same page with one another. And the door has been opened because she's open to exploring the things that I'm talking about. Okay. Sherry wants to remind us, sometimes your intuition is immediate and you know it's off. Yes, it was just strictly something felt off. Not that it's the one or something like that. It's just something feels off. So what did I do? I talked about something that felt off. That's all. Lasso says, Jonathan, just take it easy. I'm sure she's a wonderful person. Love and friendships take time, and it's hard to find. Absolutely. Catherine wants to know, are you truly over Marie in that relationship since the residue appears regularly? First off, I talk about this stuff to create context, okay? So the fact that I talk about it regularly doesn't mean that the charge is there, okay? Now, is there always residue, folks? My son passed away. Big, gigantic hole in my heart. It's always going to be there. My treasured relationship ending. Is there a bullet hole in my heart? I'm just exaggerating. Sure, that's always going to be there because I cared for another human being. That care doesn't go away. Okay? See, sometimes we have to crucify the other person to get over it, but I can send this person love. I can send every relation. By the way, I did a breath work class today, individual class, holotropic, whatever it's called. And one of the things it ended with is just giving love to every relationship I ever had. That's true. So when we go through the phases of grief, and just because I publicly talk about it, Catherine, on a regular basis, and I know, Catherine, you constantly bring this up on my videos. I'm just getting tired of it. That's why I'm responding to it finally. Getting over it, there's a big difference between I'm not a victim. I don't have any resentment towards her. I'm in a state of gratitude. I recognize I've gone through the stages of grief. Do I still feel a charge? Far less than I did the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the 100th day, the 200th day. I feel a far less charge now than I did back then. And by the way, here's what I always say. When a person's ready for a relationship is when their fear or the pain, the desire for a relationship exceeds the fear or pain. I'm no longer in fear, and that pain has subsided substantially. Okay, Catherine, can we not talk about this ever again? Because I know you keep bringing it up. All right. Tia says, thank you for sharing this. I'm the same with picking up on vibes and also being honest and upfront. I absolutely cannot deal with the surface level people. So it's no if they can't go deep. What's interesting about going deep, I think human beings are thirsty for going deep. They just haven't learned how. I think human beings, men and women alike, I'm going to be interviewing someone in a couple weeks talking about this, that men in particular are really desirous of going deeper. They just don't know how. So, I recognize that I've been doing a lot of work on myself, mostly in the area of effective communicating, learning how to communicate my needs, wants, and desires that can be seen, heard, and understood. And so from that perspective, I do believe human beings are thirsty for it. But the fact that they're having surface level conversations because they don't know any better. Let's see. Gigi says, what is the most attractive? A man who actually listens. What language do I have to speak? Don't say it to me. My career was complex communication with highly educated professionals. Yes, active listening skills is a weakness for both men and women alike. Gosh, drink up that coffee, Jonathan. Am I really that hyper? Teresa says, I love your way of expressing optimism and how really honest about you can direct the facts. You're on point. I laugh every time. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Question: how do you bridge the difference if someone is not spiritual or personal growth, in your opinion? So, it's interesting. Um, some people can take on things very quickly. So they might be introduced to something and take it on quickly. Some people can be introduced to personal development, self help, and spiritual work and reject it rather fast. Like me, I had to do it the old fashioned way, doing it over and 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 over again. But I also recognize now at a place in my life where I keep peeling the onion because it's thin layers that are coming off. How do you bridge the gap? You know what? Someone has to want to do it. And here's the thing. Whether this person is able to take in personal development and self-help spiritual work the way they claim that they might, it remains to be seen. But you know what? Being open and curious doesn't cost me that much. And the reality is not like someone perfectly aligned is knocking on my door. So, it's worth being in a place of appreciative inquiry. That's the space I'm in right now, is appreciative inquiry. Okay, thank you for that. So thank you so much. Lasso Lou, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Bum, 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 bum. Let's keep going here. Bump up. I know a lot of you are projecting stuff about Marie. T says, I agree. Some people aren't awakened to go deep and have no idea because of old programming. I've met a man who is naturally deep, but not a fit for me otherwise. Again, you know what? Being in a state of appreciative inquiry is just be in a state of curiosity. Billy Holt seems to love Marie. Marie's off doing her own thing. She's in a new relationship with someone, and she's off traveling, I'm sure, as we speak. I don't think she watches my channel anymore, Billy, so you can probably move on from that, okay? Folks, it looks like we're past the hour. Thank you so much for allowing me to enter your life. Can having sex with men over 40 early be a good thing? I just invite you to explore this question for yourself. You know what? I don't think the bonding effect, I think what's more bonding is when we connect on an emotional level. And so that might have more damage than the physical sex. But again, I do believe sex is something sacred. You should certainly feel a level of trust when you have physical intimacy. I'm just going to bring this up. Question: what did your Turkish culture teach you about relationships in general? Well, since you brought that up, I want to bring up something to everybody because I posted this on Facebook today. Speaking of Turkish, so does anyone know who this guy is? Does anyone know who this guy is? Oops. Okay, that's the man who just got the silver medal in pistol shooting from Turkey. And I want to read to you this post if you're interested in this. So it seems many people are talking about the Turkish man in the Olympics who didn't need fancy gear to get a silver medal in a shooting competition. This has affected me deeply as my heritage is Turkish. To give you a little more context, my parents are from Istanbul, Turkey, and then immigrated to the US before I was born. Growing up in the 60s, the neighborhood I lived in was second and third generation Americans, and I felt very much like an outsider having foreign parents who spoke broken English. In addition, my parents had very little knowledge of American customs, and while I was taught beautiful Turkish customs, I felt very awkward as a child because I didn't feel like I fit in. In fact, I was bullied in school and made fun of for much of my early years of life. This caused me to be so embarrassed to be Turkish that I hid the fact for much of my life. I hid the fact that I was Turkish. When I talked about my childhood wounds and traumas, most people assume abuse from parents. But there are all kinds of wounds and traumas children experience. And just like what I shared above, this shaped me as an adult because I experienced fear, awkwardness, and shame on so many different levels. Publicly, I share my experiences, including my insecurities, because I believe a good teacher has experienced pain and can share how they overcame it. Often I've been judged as a weak man or even called a feminine man. The funny thing is, it's considered to be noble to stuff one's emotions or be stoic as if it's a virtue. Look, I get bleeding one's insecurities can be overwhelming, especially if they act like a victim. I'm no victim as a child because some of my greatest lessons came from my childhood, parents, and yes, even being Turkish. It's been said that vulnerability is a true form of courage, and I invite men and women to speak up and share who they are from the heart. If you are judged for sharing an insecurity, you can tell them to go fuck off. And by the way, it's so awesome to be Turkish, and way to go, Yusuf Dertlik. That's his name. So again, here's the winner of the silver medal in pistol shooting, and he didn't wear any fancy gear to get there. And this is a cute Bugs Bunny meme. That Turkish guy at the Olympics. Folks, I've stuffed my emotions on so many different levels growing up being Turkish. That affected me greatly on so many different levels as who I am as an adult in both positive and not so healthy ways. I have fear, I have awkwardness, I have shame. I share my feelings publicly. Sometimes you guys use it against me as if there's something wrong with me. I'm just here to be a teacher who shares what I learn with everybody as I'm on this journey. I'm just sharing it along the way. I'm here to encourage personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. I'm here to encourage. The thing I try to work on most in my life is what the heck is self-love anyway? That's my goal. And I use the dating conversation to awaken consciousness for all of you. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening and watching. And Joe Daisy says, a fantastic show, Jonathan. Thank you for guiding us through these awkward times and trying to find the love of our lives. My heart appreciates you. Big hugs, Joe Daisy. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Walks of My Soul says, I love Bugs Bunny. Me too. I loved Bugs Bunny growing up. Folks, if you found that, first off, if you have something to share, post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis for less than $20 a month. There's links to get the books I recommend, to join my, to follow me on Instagram, and to get my dating vows all listed below. Power Chi wants to know if I'm related to the pistol shooter. No, I am not. Well, I guess we're all related on some level going back. I would say if Neanderthals are 100,000 years ago, we're all related in some way. By the way, from what I understand, we're all related to Genghis Khan in some way. Because he sired something like 1 million children over, and I'm just kidding with you on that. Folks, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow. There's a teddy bear. Please give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. I want to thank Marianne and Jerry and Billy Holt and Lasso and Renee and Debbie and Power Chi and Annika and Roller Girl and Crystal and Ara and Joe Daisy and Billy Holt and Catherine and Natty's and Amy and Papa Elena, Camille, Lasso, everyone, Carrie, Chrissy, everyone, big hugs. Thanks so much. Wishing you a super duper wonderful, fantastic day. Be well. Thanks. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.